So it's a perfect time to once again, I think, recap people about what is happening in Leicestershire with LGR and what has just happened recently with Leicestershire County Council having to have this um, emergency LGR meeting. They call it an extraordinary scrutiny committee meeting, which is, the technical term. I would call it more an emergency scrutiny committee meeting because that's exactly what it was. But this whole sorry tale is really and highlights the complete outright incompetence that has been exhibited on this subject, not only in Leicestershire by the Reform group and by Dan Harrison and by the rest of the Reform councillors, but pretty much in many ways mirrors many of the other things that have gone on in other reform-controlled councils that are also going to be experiencing LGR, that's local government reform, in the not-too-distant future. So why now? Well, at the end of this month, so in 3 weeks, 3 weeks' time, all the local councils or local areas that are going through LGR have to submit a plan as to what they would like to see. Now, most normal councils, they've already done this. They did this like at the start of last year. Like after last year's May local elections, or even around that time, if they weren't having those local elections, most of this was already sorted. They'd done the public consultation. They'd spoken with different groups, different, their lower tiers as well, saying what they want to do. They'd spoken with other councils, be it a city council, a town council, about what they wanted as well, and all, sort of come together. They'd all had this big organizing thing. They'd all work together to decide what they want to do and what would be best for that area going forward. However, remember, of course, May local elections came in on this. So we'll pick this up off really before the May local elections really even started back in last March, where the Conservatives put forward their plan for LGR in Leicestershire in Leicestershire County Council. So this was their plan going forward. They'd had it. They'd put it forward. It had been put out into the world. It actually existed as a document. The only problem, though, came with the fact that elections. So what happened? Those plans have essentially got shelved. They got put on the on hold in the council offices, basically to be picked up again after the election. Of course, what happened? They lost their majority, and of course, in comes Reform with their minority government to be in control and mess things up. To at that point, remember, not only did they not run on LGR, like no Reform candidate ran on LGR pretty much. The only time this came up was the fact that many Reform councillors were under the impression, I think, told by, of course, that Reform office somewhere down in the deepest, darkest, recesses of the Reform HQ, saying, okay, LGR guys, you don't have to worry about it because we're going to stop it. And that was what they ran on. They ran on this idea, knowing full well that they wouldn't have to worry too much about local government reform because, don't worry, it was somehow going to be stopped by the geniuses of like that London HQ. Somehow they were going to come up with some amazing idea. Farage, of course, talked about during the elections that there should be a local referendum put forward on this. But having all those referendums put forward by these councils would cost a heck of a lot of money. Doing the local government the way it is being done now has actually been far, far more efficient, letting councils sort it out themselves between them all, sorting out what direction they wanted to go in and what they wanted their new local authorities to actually look like. Meanwhile, of course, a referendum, it's not really something you can just fit in to like one word. You might have had to go into a polling booth and what option do you want? Do you want A, B, or C? Well, trying to explain different options to people being A, B, and C. Do you want two unitaries, a single unitary? Maybe you want three unitaries, and how, depending how things might be split up, it might be a bit very too far complicated to be put down and boiled to a simple box ticking exercise. It's something that actually needs to be discussed, needs to be talked about in these types of council offices and chambers. So this is where we pick back up after local elections, after all this 2 or 3 months of, them, quote, getting their feet under the table. Finally, the issue of local government reform seems to come up between, Dan Harrison gets talked about and asked by opposition parties from the Conservatives, the Labour, Lib Dems, etc., saying, "Well, okay, we know LGR is happening. So, what's your intention about it? Like, what do you intend to do?" And of course, the answer from them was varied from, "We're not interested in doing it. Well, we might go for this way. We might do this. We don't really know really what we're going to do." And Dan Harrison and the reform, lot in Leicester plowed on through the summer, not doing anything in regards to LGR, where they could have, if they wanted to, have done stuff about LGR. They could have done a public consultation during the summer saying, "Hey, this is our plan. What do you want to do?" Now, of course, they have had a, a local consultation. It lasted about 2 weeks, and from what I can at least tell, there wasn't too much pickup on this because they weren't exactly saying, "Hey, this is LGR. This is what we're going to do." Plans are afoot. However, this is where it comes back to, as I said, that special, extraordinary scrutiny meeting when it came to LGR. Well, here they all were, the full scrutiny commission of the full scrutiny board and panel, all there. Reform does this wonderful slideshow about all LGR and what they intend to do. Meanwhile, of course, there sat the Conservatives looking very, very amused and somewhat entertained by the fact that Dan Harrison had been clearly rummaging around the council and found, of course, their plans that they had put forward back in March of what they intended to do for LGR. So what essentially has happened in Leicestershire is that the Conservatives put forward a plan of what they intend to do back in March. They even ran on it back at May's local election. Of course, they lost the majority. They were not in charge of the council. Reform then took over, did nothing about it since taking over, didn't really talk about it, weren't really too interested in it, realized, oh no, the deadline's coming up. What are we going to do? There was potential, of course, about city expansion of Leicestershire, of Leicester, being expanded. They didn't want that to happen. They didn't want it to look bad, like they'd given away part of Leicestershire to, to the city expansion. So in their panic, Dan Harrison went really running around, found these Conservatives' plans, and basically did the whole switcheroo of where it said Conservative plan and just slapped a reform sticker over it and say, "Hey, isn't this our plan? Isn't this good?" To which the Conservatives laughed it off and brought it up many times in the scrutiny meeting. Yeah, that's our plan back from March. So essentially now for Leicestershire, it looks like they are actually potentially looking like, so far, bear in mind, they might actually meet this deadline. Time will, of course, tell if they actually do or not meet this deadline. But they're actually now have a plan when many councils had already, at this point, been all done and dusted and knew what exactly they were going to put forward for this deadline. Many had even actually submitted what they wanted even before this point. Meanwhile, of course, remember, Dan Harrison's now got 3 weeks where this has now been to the scrutiny committee. It's now going to go to the cabinet. They've now got to have a full council meeting, which again, they hope it's going to get passed. No doubt there will be a couple of objections raised, no doubts. But ultimately, I think this plan may pass. So it looks like, at least certainly in this regard, when it comes to Leicestershire's LGR plans, looks like they might actually maybe just manage to meet the deadline by, thankfully, managing to copy the Conservatives' homework on this one. So, as always, let me know what you think about all of this. And of course, as always, if you are from Leicestershire, do let me know what you think about all these LGR plans. It's always interesting to know. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.